I'm Dr. Vibha Rathod, Assistant Professor, History, Department of Humanities, BSSS College, Bhopal. I'm going to present a brief history of French Revolution. So my today's topic is French Revolution 1789. This lecture is not a detailed study about the French Revolution, but to provide an analysis. We shall seek to look at the historical forces that brought this cataclysmic event about France in 1789. We seek to present the social, political and economic conditions of France under the ancient regime and to understand the nature of the crisis. At the same time, we shall look at the intellectual ambience which can only be studied in the context of enlightenment in 18th century. So all about the French Revolution, we can say the French Revolution was equally a struggle of weapons as well as the struggle of ideas. Freedom, equality and fraternity are the eternal contributions of this revolution. Now next, we can talk about the crisis of ancient regime in France. So during the last years of the ancient regime, there was a wide dissatisfaction at the different levels of the society about the manner in which the France was being governed. We shall, in order to understand or to make sense of this statement, we shall need first of all to look at the political, social and economic setup of France. So, I am going to start with the social condition or the social setup of France. Social conditions, if we take the social conditions of France, the society in France was divided into three categories. The first category comprised the clergy. The second category comprised the nobility, or we can call them aristocratic class, and the third category was comprised the commoners of the society, or we can say the rest of the people of the France who belong to the third state. So, here we can say that French society was unequal and basically it was based on the medieval infrastructure. In reality, if we divide the society of France, we can say that society was divided in two categories, that privileged minorities and the unprivileged majority. Unprivileged majority or minority, here it is a difference. So there were three states, as I said before, that first state belonged to clergy, the second state belonged to nobility and the third state belonged to rest of the commoners of the France. First state, let us talk about the first state. The first state was clergy, and in that clergy all the rich class people, basically we can say the pope, the archbishops, the bishops and the parish priests were the part of this clergy. The church, it was the largest owner of the land, and about 130 million of livers they were getting from the land, and church was the only institution that was collecting the tax which was named as tithe. What was tithe? Actually two kinds of taxes were collected in the French society. One was taille and second one was tithe. As I said earlier that there was a privileged minority class. So two classes which I discussed, the first state that was clergy and the second state that was nobility, both of them were privileged minority because they were lesser in numbers. The clergy was around 1 lakh in number and the nobility was around 4 lakh in number. So overall, in the overall population, 5 to 6% people belong to first and second states. They were privileged one, but they were in minority. And these two states, they were not paying a single penny as a tax. So all the resourceless people of the third state, they were paying all kind of taxes. So exactly we can say they were the more and more burdened class of the society. The nobility actually represented the second state, but there were differences in the society. The noble class was divided in two categories again. The noblesse d'épée means the nobility of sword, and the noblesse de robe means the nobles of the robe. Both of them belonged to higher classes. Both the classes were privileged. They were also not paying a single penny as a tax. Now, let us come to the third state. About 94% population of France belong to the commoners. This class again consisted of three categories, as here nowadays we can divide our class, that is upper middle class and lower middle class. In the same way, the third state was also divided into two categories, upper clergy and lower clergy. So if we talk about upper clergy, basically we can call them the bourgeois class. Bourgeois class, and the next one was the peasantry and the artisans and laborers from the society. The state included the richest bourgeois and as well as the destitute. Without doubt, the most advanced section of this state had been the bourgeois. Who were the bourgeois actually? Bourgeois were the literate class. We can count the teachers, professors, lawyers, doctors and engineers under this category. And these were the people, they were looking for the change in the society. Though they belonged to the third state, they didn't have any right, they didn't have any special right, but then too they wanted to bring some changes in the society. Now next category in third state was the peasantry. Peasantry constituted the majority of the population. Their plight was very sad and shocking. Their condition was pathetic because the 80% of their production they were paying as a tax. The next class was the artisans and the laborers. They were living the life of misery. They were paid less wages, but their working hours were very long. So their condition was also the same like the peasantry. It had been estimated between 1785 to 1789, the wages rose around 22%, but the price of bread rose around 88%. So here we can guess that what kind of sufferings the people of third state they had. Now next is political conditions in France. The political setup actually was based on the hereditary absolute monarchy. King held himself as the representative of God on earth, means he was saying that he has all the powers, whatever he is saying, whatever orders he is giving, that everybody has to follow. Louis XV, the successor of Louis XIV, was incompetent, and he instead of improving the administration, he indulged in the vagaries of the luxuries of life. And he realized that at the verge of his death, he admitted that an insurgence will erupt after my death. Under this desperate condition, Louis XVI in 1774 ascended the throne. He was lacked in leadership and was least bothered about the problems of commoners. He summoned the meeting of States General. States General actually was an institution which had all three states under this. The meeting of States General actually was called in 1614, and now it was called after so many years by Louis XVI. The administration in France was very corrupt. It was not good. Punishments were rigorous and biased. Why they were biased? Because both the first and second state people, they were exempted from the taxes, and as well as they were not getting punishment for certain crimes. So all the punishment basically were for the third state. Next is economic setup in France. The economic condition of France was very miserable. Extravagance of ruling class, erratic taxation system were fully accountable for the economic crisis in France. Prior to the revolution, France sustained a loss of $2 million every year, and which was compensated by the borrowing money of exorbitant interest. So half of the revenue half of the national revenue was paid on paying interest of loans. An extravagant court, intermittent war, it really represented a heavy loss or heavy drain on the treasury. Between 1763 to 1783, the government had spent an amount of 200 million sterling pounds on wars. So the economic crisis was already there in the France, and it we can say it was a kind of a backdrop behind this 1789 revolution. King Louis XVI, he wanted to impose the taxes on the commoners again. So he called the meeting of States General and imposed new taxes on 7th May 1789. All the three states were there in that meeting, but the third state was adamant, remained adamant on it. They took to hold step and declared that we are not going to give any other taxes, and they declared themselves the National Council on 17th June 1789. After that, the third chamber moved out to the tennis court, and there the representative of the third state, they solemnly took pledge on the tennis court. The pious pledge executed by the representatives on the court, and this is famous in history as the tennis court oath. What was this tennis court oath? The oath was the declaration of the end of the absolute monarchy based on the divine rights and the beginning of a limited monarchy. On 9th July, the National Council declared to be the Constituent Assembly, and the King had to accept this decision. The King and the Assembly were suspicious of each other. The condition of Paris became turbulent. On 13th July, wine shops and the bakery shops were looted by the commoners. There was a rumor that soldiers were being sent to the Paris. It infuriated the people too much, and they decided to equip themselves with the weapons and arms. From the early morning of the 14th July 1789, Paris underwent tense, drastic atmosphere. The great crowd moved on the streets on 14th July 1789 in the morning, and the unruly crowd stormed into the Bastille fort. The great crowd marched towards Bastille. The unruly crowd stormed into the Bastille fort, set all prisoners free, ravaged and razed it. With the demolition of the Bastille, the current of ecstasy swept Paris. So here we can understand that how the people came and how they destroyed the Bastille jail. Bastille jail, actually, it was the symbol of the despotic rule of the rulers. This event of storming the Bastille was a portent of the advent of great changes. It sounded the trumpet of revolution. The destruction of the fort was reckoned as a signal of the rejuvenation of independence, not only in France but all over the Europe. 14th July was declared as a national day. In place of the old national flag, a new tricolor having red, white and blue colors was adopted. So in that way, the revolution of 1789 held in France. This was the module 1, and in the next module we will discuss about the impact of this French Revolution in France as well as in Europe. Thank you.